Welcome to the Human Rights Committee of Council regular meeting agenda for October 9th. My name is Sherry Rollins. I'd like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory in the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. This is the first time we've been together that hasn't been informal, I think, in a long, long time. So welcome. We've got some new members with us. Welcome. I thought we'd begin with a bit of an icebreaker, given that we are the Human Rights Committee of Council, and just go around and talk about, for very briefly, what human rights issues that are on our mind or what we've been working on. And if we can, we'll start maybe outside the room first. Angie, I can see that you're there. Maybe I'll pick on you just briefly to start us off, and then feel free to bring someone else in, because I don't know who you might see on your screen there, but
okay, sounds good. So I am Angie Conrad. I sit on the Human Rights Committee of Council, obviously, but I'm also the chair of the Accessibility and Inclusion Subcommittee. So for me, what I'm working on and always working on is particularly rights in the disability field. I do this professionally at the University of Manitoba, and I also do work in this area in the community. So I always am working in the space of intersection as well. So it's not just, disability and accessibility, but always having conversations with folks around the intersections and how that impacts people within our community. So that's me in a very, very brief nutshell. Who will I pass it off to? Lizzie, if you'd like to go next.
Hi, sure. Thanks, Angie. My name is Lizzie Tuff. My pronouns are they, them. I am a co-chair for the first Accessibility Law Conference that's happening in February 2026, aimed at educating lawyers on their requirements as legal professionals to provide information in accessible formats, and also sort of inform them on things like the Accessibility for Manitobans Act and the federal act as well. I have just recently started doing workplace training about queer and gender diversity and inclusivity and safe spaces in the workplace. And I have been doing extensive research on the implementation of Canada's international human rights obligations at the federal and provincial and municipal level. And I will pass it on to Ruben.
Ruben, you're muted.
Sorry, I am Ruben Garang. I'm joining online. I work for organization called Immigration Partnership Winnipeg. I'm a director on issues related to human rights. As someone who work with newcomers, someone who work with Black communities, I am there to support any cause that promote equity and equality in the life of people. So I will end there, and I'm not seeing anybody online on my screen. I'm on a cell phone here. I have an issue with my computer this afternoon with password, so just join on my cell phone.
Okay. What about Ayodele? And we'll pass it to Ayodele.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ayodele. My pronoun is he, him. And my own, I'm not a chair of any committee, but I'm sitting on a chair. right here. um, I am always available to lend my support and lend my voice to promote equity and diversity where it's needed. Lately, and for some years now, we've been having many of those organizations that celebrate cultural diversity within our community and around us, especially those that are not well-known new organization that does festival training for young, vibrant African Caribbean community. And they've been finding it so hard to access support financially to promote the their vision and goals within um, their set goal and vision. And this is where I believe we need more support. People like that, I stand for them, and we've been working, behind the scene, and hopefully they gain more access and their voices heard, so that not only the long-standing community event and celebration are only getting access to funds, but also they are new between the last 5 to 10 years. Cultural and diversity supporting organization will also get access. Thank you. I'll stop there for now.
You have one more task, though. You have to nominate the next person for their human rights reflection.
That is true. All right. And you have spoken. Those online. Devon Clunis, is he available? I can pass it to Devon Clunis.
We can. Devon Clunis is online. I believe Perry's online too. They're going to be coming into the agenda to speak with us a little later.
Okay.
So we can pass it to a member of committee from now. We for sure will get Devon Clunis and Perry to win. And
I just love him. Don't mind me.
Are also with us that aren't necessarily on camera right now.
All right, Lizzie has spoken. I believe so. Yeah. Who else?
Doris is here. Kara's here.
All right.
Doris is here.
Over to Doris then.
Doris.
Sorry, over to Derek.
Oh, Doris, you're muted. Oh, sorry.
Was having trouble seeing that. My name is Doris, and I've been on the Human Rights Committee for 2 years. I'm fairly new in Manitoba. 2 years. I've been here 2 years now, and I'm not on any. I don't work in the community. I'm retired, and so my human rights involvement is just what I do on a day-to-day basis, because I've always been a very strong advocate of human rights, especially with regard to racism. And I still see it everywhere, every day. And I still comment on it wherever I go, doctor's office, bank, whatever. And so I try to make changes more quietly because I don't work in one of your agencies. But I do make changes wherever I can. And at my age, I have a lot of medical appointments, and so that's one of the places that are very discriminatory towards people and towards seniors. Actually, I really wasn't that focused on seniors before, but I am now, and so I guess I will continue to do what I do, unless somebody has something more for me to do. Thank you. It's been fun getting to know all of you and learning about Winnipeg in the past year. Thanks.
Thank you, Doris. I think we have Phyllis and Kara left. So Phyllis, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Phyllis Reed Jarvis. My pronouns are listed, she, her, and very excited to be here. And so thank you for this opportunity. So my work in human rights has been a work that's been going on ever since I was age 4. And I won't take you all the way back there. We'll start at current day. But I have been focusing quite deeply in terms of my work with organizations looking at more restorative approaches, because my experience over the years, they have shown me that we've a lot of humanity has been lost, and of course lots of people's human rights have been trampled on, as I've heard from my colleagues here, and continue to be trampled on. So with a specific focus on anti-Black racism and human rights for all, this approach of restorative coaching and restorative leadership is what I find to be necessary, and one that I believe very, very deeply and strongly is what we could use right now, is to come back to a place of restoration. And so I'm very honored and very, very privileged to have some very significant organizations that are embracing a restorative approach within their leadership and their organization as a whole. And that is what I look forward to working with folks in community to put in place. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kara McCaskill. I have been on the Human Rights Committee of Council for just under 2 years and am now the chair of the Equity and Diversity Subcommittee. We actually just had a meeting of our subcommittee today, so I can share what we've been working on, which is trying to work towards bettering the state of 2S LGBTQIA+ rights in the city of Winnipeg. And we're also talking about potentially doing a dialogue event, which is exciting. And in my professional life, my work is around anti-sexual violence work. So at the moment, I am doing my best to support the human right to mental health and support services for survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
Thank you for sharing. Did you want to share, Ali?
I'm just working on my job, so
working
just
on my
doing
job.
my job, yeah.
Which is, of course, the Human Rights Coordinator
Yeah.
for the Committee of Council. Peter Prinsloo, Clerk, would you like to share?
Very much in line with what Ali said.
Yeah, doing a
doing
good
my
job.
job.
Just
And-
doing our
and-
best.
And access to democracy is a human right, and so that's clerks.
Absolutely. And if you're eligible, please go out and vote October 25th or at many of our advanced locations as well.
There is a by-election coming up for an Elmwood City Council seat, October 25th. Thank you, Peter. Devon Clunas, you were invited to share this part. Of course, you're joining us on the agenda later, but this part is just reflections, a quick reflection introduction on human rights work.
I think human rights work is everything that we're all about. And I'm here because I truly believe that our city needs to lead and set an example for the world. And so you'll hear a little bit more about that later. But I think human rights work is not separate and apart. I think it's integral to everything. It's kind of like the air that we breathe. We can't see it as something separate. Human rights is foundational to our very existence if we want to do it well.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, everybody. We'll figure out if we love this introduction, but I think it humanizes the meeting a bit to get introductions and then what we're just working on out of the way. I want to ask someone for a motion for the minutes of the last meeting. So moved by Ayudali. All those in favor? That was carried. Thank you. I also would like to ask, in recognition of the public service being with us, Diane Burrell is here, David Clark is here, Greg McPherson's here, on behalf of the Human Rights annual workforce diversity report. If we can move agenda item number 6 up to number 1, and then the rest of it, the meeting will flow as is. If someone could move that so that, thank you, Ayudeli. If there's any discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, if not, we'll move, unless I'm forgetting something, we'll move to hear from the public service.
And while they come to the table, if we can just have a motion to allow our remote participants at the meeting today. So perhaps if
So
Kara
moved
could,
by Kara, all those in favor for remote participation? I can encourage you all remotely to vote for that. And we do need a motion for a leave of absence for Councillor Chambers. I will move that if you don't mind. Actually, I can't. I'll have to get someone to move it. Thank you, Ayudeli, and thank you, Angie. All those in favor? That was carried, I believe, unanimously, unless there's discussion. That was carried. Okay. Mr. Clark, the team, Greg McPherson,
And Suzanne?
Suzanne, and
Jay.
Jennifer.
Jennifer,
Okay,
sorry.
sorry.
Sorry, he got me, and then I questioned my own self.
Yeah, that was me.
I'll let you introduce your team.
All right. Good afternoon, Human Rights Committee of Council. I'm Dave Clark, Director of HR. Greg McPherson, Acting Manager of Community Development. Jennifer Boddenchuk, our Senior Data Scientist from our Innovation Group. And then Diane Burrell, our EDI Coordinator. So happy to present the 2024 Workforce Diversity Report. Just want to acknowledge the amazing work that Diane has done. In bringing together a whole bunch of loose ends and tying it beautifully together into this report with a lot of information, a lot of data, and many thanks to the Diversity Reports Working Group as well, as they enable the tracking, the statistics, the analysis of the work as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Diane to walk us through a little bit, but I can come back and talk about a few specific subjects.
Okay. All right, just high level, you'll have seen in the report that the city of Winnipeg has continued to work diligently in increasing representation of all 6 equity groups and the intersectionality group. And we saw a positive trend. And so 6 out of the 7, we had some positive direction, and women had decreased slightly. A few percentage points, 0.05 percentage points. And further analysis showed that gaps persist, and we need to have a concerted effort with strong leadership and deep work on removing systemic barriers and creating those strategies to increase representation at all levels of the organization. And that work is, I'm happy to report, well underway. We've set the foundation with the diversity dashboard. Jennifer team on the diversity reports working group. We work diligently to fine tune the diversity dashboard, which informs each of the departments what their diversity profile is, what the gap analyses are, and it informs their recruitment strategies on the go forward basis. So it's very exciting, but as you see in the report, there's a lot of work to do. So that's just a high overview. I can turn it over to Jen if you wanted to add anything.
I don't know if I need to add anything, but I'm here to answer any questions about the data.
Just in terms of the structure of the report on page 6, there's just bulleted breakdowns of our equity groups and the numbers that were reported. Page 19 is our self-declaration questionnaire, 19 to 21. Just for how we collect that data voluntarily from our workforce, which feeds into our diversity dashboard and into our open data. And then further on, a lot of tables, a lot of appendices to help break down that information a little bit more, but open to any questions that you might have.
Committee, are there questions with respect to the annual workforce diversity report? Phyllis.
Thank you. Thanks to Diane, Dave. I know how much work went into gathering this data, and it is so important as you've highlighted. I'm curious to just hear from you high level, and forgive me that I'm not as deeply on top of the report. I did a quick read, I must admit. But can you speak to the percentage of self-declaration, fairly high level, whether that has increased or if it's stable? And then my second question is, I heard that the number of women, I believe in different positions, that has been less than before. Did I hear you correctly, Diane? Yeah.
Increase for women.
Yeah, so just high level, whether there's any sort of additional information that would inform that particular data in terms of the number of women in certain roles, and of course, in looking at employees from diverse communities, particularly employees who are, whether they're Indigenous, Black employees, members of the 2SLGBTQIA plus group, and so on. So very high level, if you could respond to that, please.
All right, I'll take a crack, and I might look to Jennifer as my lifeline on this. So in terms of self-declaration questionnaires, and this is awkward on who to speak to, but we have seen an increase over time. So I believe for the 2024 report, we were just over 60% in terms of our population that have completed the SDQ. As of Monday, this past Monday, we were at 64.5%. So we are seeing gradual increase. What I would absolutely say is there is a need for that to continue to grow. What we have established is that when an individual is applying to come to work for the city of Winnipeg, we put that SDQ as that first step. Even before they submit their job application, they're filling in the SDQ. So hopefully we're getting people right when they come in the door. But we've also gone on a fairly extensive promoting campaign to get SDQs filled in for the rest of our population. So that being said, yes, it's going up. But in that, there's also a portion of the population that, while they're completing the SDQ, they're electing not to disclose. They'd prefer not to disclose. So I believe just over 20% is what we're looking at of those who are disclosing that would say, I prefer not to disclose. So I think there's a number of reasons behind that. But so that's one of the things that I just wanted to touch on. If I got no questions, it was going to be where I was going to feed myself something. But just in terms of presenting more education on why we do SDQs and why is it important to us. I had a conversation with a director last week regarding an individual who identifies in the workplace in one of these equity groups, but has said, I'm not filling in the SDQ. And so we need to ensure that people understand why we're doing it and the anonymity behind it, ensuring that they are confident in that. But the importance that it is that as we build our workforce, that we are representative of the community that we serve. So we'll continue to work on that, and I want to work with the diversity reports working group and communications to kind of build that out and make it more comprehensive. So that's one initiative that I want to undertake. When it comes to the women, the identified women within the report, yes, we went from 26.37 to 26.32. There's a little bit more analysis on page 23 of the report that kind of speaks to the dynamic of that number. So while we went down in percent, we actually went up in actuals. We went up 40. But all that to say, lots of work to do. Our number's not where it needs to be, so we need to continue to move that forward. In terms of the breakdown of where these roles are for both women and other equity groups, I'm not going to know the table off the top of my head, but it is somewhere in this report where we do break it down in terms of type of work within the city of Winnipeg, as well as level within the org structure. So If I didn't capture anything, my apologies, Phyllis, but hopefully that helps answer most of the questions.
Okay, thanks, Dave. I appreciate that.
There is a action plan and strategy in Appendix F that is I'd like you to talk about. I'd like you to talk about it and say is this still it? And because it's meant to be a multi-year strategy. And yet there is about 20 places where the work is just on hold. And so is it realistic when a strategy, when it is a position that isn't filled as a starting point? And do you feel that the strategy then addresses the challenges within the annual workforce diversity report, and then how? Especially when you see some, language in it like this isn't going to happen.
Appendix F, the EDI strategy. I believe there's about 53 actions that were outlined throughout this document. Greg and I have actually sat down, Chris Brenz when he was here earlier this year, but we've actually sat down and we've started talking through all of these actions. As some relate to community development, some relate to HR. So kind of where do these actions align and who is best to be tackling those? So we've engaged in the conversation, but I would agree with you that some of these items may have sat for a long time and maybe some need to be examined on. Are these still focused to the goal that we're trying to accomplish? Or perhaps over time, we need to reevaluate where we're going on some of these and what's the realistic time frame. I don't think that any of these are necessarily negative or something that we shouldn't approach, but it's a matter of when can we get around to it with the resources and the FTEs that we have available to accomplish that. When it comes to moving the needle on the workforce diversity report, I think there's a lot of things in here when we talk about programs, employment programs, bridging programs, really enabling us to grow our equity groups within the city of Winnipeg. Those are great. And we're actually instituting an EDI and accessibility consultant into the group to go and work on some of those programs as well. So we're getting now to those activities and actions. So I think there's some that will be more impactful, maybe a little bit more bang for the buck that we can deliver on, and others that we might want to just sit down and say, is this truly necessary or needed? But this is very real and live to us as a action document for us to be looking at and to be working through. So there's a lot of things that we can be doing that aren't necessarily addressed in these 53 or 57 actions that we're still engaging in as well. But we're also respecting that these exist and we need to be adhering to them.
So I'm hearing that it's both the strategy and not the strategy that you're presenting, that there's material in here. There's some things like, for instance, you have, one of the items that caught my eye that is on hold is internships. Internships that do allow for a look-see into a workplace that, isn't a commitment, it's an internship. It's also arguably something that as a large employer in the city, we should be doing our duty, and I'll use that word, to providing internships. There are many employers, some of whom are in this room and work as a citizen, members of the committee, that take on interns. And they might argue, well, I'm just a 4-person or a 2-person office. I take on interns. Why is that on hold for a government of, a civil servants? Why is that on hold? Why is that awaiting a
I
resource?
would have to take a look to see what exactly is on hold in respect to that, because I know we do work placements with a number of different agencies and organizations around Winnipeg. Whether or not they're labeled as internships, I'd have to look to see what the terminology is that we're using, but
I can add to that. So the talent acquisition team does host internships or arrange for internships for programs in post-secondary institutions within which the programming has it set as a core requirement to meeting the graduation core requirements of the course. So that's one of the parameters within which they have scoped it right now. And this specific EDI focused one is to explore expanding it to all equity groups as needed, as it makes sense, and making sure that we have the legal parameters to do so in a safe way and make sure that everyone, the person on site is protected and the employer. All of those things need to be set up for an internship program outside of what currently is in place. But to Dave's point, we do host. We just want to do more. And
But you're not doing it at all. And is it like getting perfection in the way of the good? Because all employers have to guarantee a safe workplace for interns. I have to if I do it, and so do you. But that's not any different from any other workplace.
it's what's been scoped for hosting to date. Yeah. So they do happen, but it's for programs where it's an integral part of graduation from that program.
Sure. Just like the human rights internship is an integral part of graduating if you're a human rights intern. And so is it something that you're looking at? This is a strategy, but do I understand it is something you intend to implement?
When you point it out like this, I will have to go back and find out kind of what are our barriers to implementation. I think Diane's kind of indicated the legal parameters and protections that the city might be looking for in regards to that, but can we overcome those barriers?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's on hold pending the hiring of the FTE that had been approved several cycles ago. So it's to fill that position and then focus it on detailing all of these types of employment related programs.
What several cycles ago, which budget is that?
It was approved in 2024 and then on hold. And then we were given the green light in 2025, but then on hold again. There was a restructuring and there's a redefining. So it's coming. It's coming.
Speak to that too. It's been sent to Comp and Class for classification. So we should have that posting relatively soon. We're looking forward to hiring that FTE as quickly as we can.
And would that still be the work that they would be doing?
Yes, I think many of the responsibilities outlined in the EDI strategy will fall within the scope of that position and certainly Diane's existing position moving forward. So we're looking forward to doubling our efforts over the next little while. It's new to our division, so we're still learning, but I know how busy Diane is, and I think this will be a welcome addition to the effort very soon.
Typically what happens at the Human Rights Committee of Council is that we receive it as information. Is that the recommendation from the public service today, or is there something else you could conceive of that would be helpful?
I suggest receiving it as information.
And then we don't see you for another year?
Gladly come back.
Typically happens?
Yes. Yeah, normally this report would come to HRCC May or June, I believe, and then gets the EPC and then council before summer break.
So we'll see it again in May or June?
Yeah.
Q2? The same report? Okay. Well, let's stick it on the agenda for Q2 of the Human Rights Committee of Council. if someone could move this for information and the motion to receive it as information and to put it on the agenda for Q2.
Sorry, just before that, Councillor Rollins, Ruben has had his hand up for quite some time.
Oh, I couldn't see it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. And I have my hand up too for after that.
No, thank you.
As well as me.
Oh, I can't see yours at all, Angie. I can see now that Lizzie's, so thank you very much. That is a very important, you are now appointed co-chair, Lizzie, of this meeting, because I could not see those hands. Who was first then? Ruben?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ruben.
I'm very new to the committee. This is my first meeting, so I'm going to be learning a lot. So I don't have a lot of questions. The only question that I have is when you were doing the presentation, I heard that you have done what you could, but you stated that you need a more effort and leadership. I just wanted to know generally what kind of leadership are you looking for? Like what would advance this work from the from all level of leadership? I know that there's different structures. What were you thinking, like when you were saying that you need more leadership? In what way?
I wouldn't necessarily say that it's more leadership needed. What is encouraging is that our department heads, the departmental leaders, I'm going to say are invested in this now. Before the meeting started, Jennifer, Diane, and I we were discussing about this diversity dashboard reports, and with our leaders are now looking at the numbers and the representation for each of their departments. I want to celebrate it as good news, even though it's a 2025 thing. In 2024, in the last 3 quarters of 2024, we saw diversity dashboard reviews being just around 550, probably a little bit lower than that total views. For 2025, we're over 1,500 for the first 3 quarters, so almost 3 times as much, and 852 in this last quarter in Q3. So it's encouraging to me that we're seeing that buy-in, that investment, and that need for knowledge to be able to move the needle on these things. So not to just sit back and expect things to work out and fix themselves, but to understand what the numbers are and then go and form strategies that are going to assist in those numbers. So I would say that's about the leadership. Again, we need allies. We need leaders at all levels of the organization, from Councillor Rollins, every department head, everyone pushing for improvement in this area.
Thank you.
Lizzie, Angie?
Hi, yeah, I just had a couple questions. First, so I'm looking at the SDQ in Appendix A, and I know that you had mentioned that there were other opportunities to gain data on identity and self-declaration. I'm just wondering if any of those opportunities are done anonymously, because for some individuals, they may feel uneasy and prefer not to disclose if they have to identify themselves by name or employee ID or anything like that.
Yes, Diane or Jennifer to.
Okay. We want the employees to identify, and we need to be able to link that to the position, and in order to report anonymized aggregate data in this reporting. So there is, for the way we are working the self-declaration questionnaire, we do need to have that volition sharing, and they only share to the extent that they're comfortable. And so to Dave's point, we need a solid campaign to say your information is so secure. We have information governance that is so rigorous that, you know, suppression of data, if equity group numbers don't exceed 10, and that's 15 for persons with disabilities. All information that's pulled from People Software applicants' data go when they're hired, and when employees go to their employee self-service to fill the SDQ, provide updates as they grow more comfortable or their situation changes. They can keep it as current and fresh as they want. They have direct access. Every single employee has that access. And so when those reports are generated, they are completely anonymized for the Diversity Reports Working Group, and the data scientists are working with raw data to provide the diversity dashboard information to leaders and analysts, as well as the snapshot at year end for this annual workforce diversity report. So that's the information that we need to get to everyone so they feel comfortable and understand the importance, the strategic importance of this data collection.
Okay, so just to clarify, there is no opportunity to collect anonymous data then?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. And then my second question was, I was looking at the numbers, and I kind of feel like the decrease in percentage, even though the numbers of individuals hired who self-identify as women, even though that number has gone up and the percentage has gone down, I just wanted to mention, I kind of feel like that in and of itself has been a bit downplayed, because there's, you know, that's 21% below the target. So that is almost 50% below the 47% target if you guys are at 26%. So I just want to say I would like to see in future reports more information about recruitment strategies, including recruitment strategies outside of partnerships with the universities, because not everybody who works for the city of Winnipeg is coming out of a university setting.
Angie and Phyllis?
My question is about process. So I'm just wondering, you know, so someone self-identifies within the recruitment process, whether that's external or internal. And I'm just wondering, how is that information used throughout the process? Is it a gateway at the right at the outset when applications are being considered? You know, there's a certain amount of quotas, if you will, around who's considered within the process, and then is that enduring throughout the process, throughout the selection process? So are folks just getting in the door and then, you know, they have to go through testing or pre-screening, testing, interview, all the things? And so I guess my question is two-part. Are there processes throughout? And how is the messaging out to all hiring leaders within the city of Winnipeg? As we know, it's quite a layered, you know, organization, right? And so a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of layers. You could have folks, branch heads in libraries hiring, right? So, or someone from planning, property and development. All that to say, what are the processes? What is the messaging, you know, outside of metrics? Because metrics are great. Metrics are good, hard numbers, but they don't really get at the systemic. How's the city addressing systemic issues and barriers with regards to hiring folks who are either racially marginalized, have a disability, et cetera, or all of the above? So if you can speak to that, please.
In terms of the process, so we have HR consultants, HR professionals working on all recruitments for the city of Winnipeg. with departmental leaders. So as you mentioned, PP&D, branch heads for libraries, always going to be paired up with an HR professional. Now, we have in-depth diversity, inclusion, and belonging training for recruitment to ensure that we're mindful and considerate of adding diversity and inclusion into our recruitment process and all stages of it. We also have a recruitment process that's called One City, One Process for recruitment. So a consistent, standardized approach that includes diversity within the recruitment process. What we've also rolled out when you talk about recruitment strategies and what we can do. So consideration when we're hiring externally about additional points or a percentage awarded for individuals who fall within equity groups. The ability to designate positions as preferred for certain equity groups, and then also going as far as designating positions for certain equity groups. So preferred would be if we have the ability to hire someone within that identified equity group, we would. Otherwise, we would just proceed with the recruitment. Designated meaning if we don't get anyone from that identified equity group, we would close the posting and repost. So we do have a number of different strategies and approaches, and then a consistent process for diversity is built in.
So can you just speak a bit further about the points process? Like how are points allocated? How is that determined? Who gets what points?
I have to go back and get a little bit more detail exactly to speak precisely on it, but I can take that away and get it back to the.
Yeah, I mean, that would be really appreciated. I think it would probably be a valuable piece for a suggestion for the committee to have a look at the point system on how equity deserving candidates are evaluated.
If you're ready, Angie, Phyllis has her hand up, and I can't see if that is a yellow hand, Ayodele, but or a green dot on the roof. But Phyllis, are you?
I'm good to go. I'm
Are you
ready
good
to
to
pass
go,
it off.
Angie?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Phyllis, and then that's it.
Okay, thank you so much. My question is a process question. I think it's connected to what Angie just asked. And I'm particularly interested in the overall report on page 6, the annual workforce diversity report on page 6, where it lists the groups. So Indigenous peoples, racialized peoples, women, to LGBTQIA plus peoples, and so on. And I just wanted to ask a question regarding the racialized peoples in the context of the Public Service Association of Canada's move to actually delineate 6 particular groups, specific groups of individuals. So the question is whether that is something the City of Winnipeg is considering, but it's just presented like this, or will be considering, because the history of collecting data regarding folks from equity due communities and their ability to be hired, be moved through an organization to their full potential is one that's often sort of wrapped into one blanket statement. So we say racialized peoples, but yet we don't know whether people of African descent, so they're called Black people here in Canada, so like Black people, specifically Indigenous folks, specifically neurodivergent folks, and so on. So we don't know how those individuals are sort of making their way through when it's compiled under the umbrella of racialized peoples. So I'm just wondering, Dave and Diane, whether this is something you could speak to. And again, I think my question is all about the breaking down. Again, a process question.
Yeah, if you want.
Thank you for the question, Phyllis. And the self-declaration questionnaire has been designed to gather that diversity within each of the equity groups. And in one of the appendices, I think it's D, where we go into some preliminary disaggregated data analyses showing the diversity within. And so it's really helping us understand what that representation is for all of those subgroups, if you will, within each. So we do have that analysis. We've started for the first time in 2024, and the report is a preliminary little taste of where we've started, but the response rate had to reach over 60% for us to start doing that meaningful mining of the disaggregated data. And Jen, as the senior data scientist, can speak more to it.
Yeah, no, I think that you, like what you said is right. Like we've just started, this was our first year, the first report where we did break down the subgroups. And so I think definitely this year was an appendix, but for next year's report, we could look at expanding it more in the main body of the report to give more detailed information for the different groups within racialized peoples.
That would be very helpful. And again, very high level. I don't know if you can just very quickly high level speak to what you're seeing in terms of those 6 specific groups that PSAP, Public Service Association of Canada, recognizes equity due communities. How are they performing at the City of Winnipeg? Is that something that you would have sort of at your fingertips, or I'm happy to, give you some time to look it up and we can follow up another time?
Well, we'll have to see how we're mapping into those specific groups, and we'll have to get back to you, Phyllis.
And just there's just one final question that I have, and I believe, if I heard correctly at the top of the meeting, that we won't be seeing the group, the team, for another year, or was that just a little poking on the part of Councillor Rawlins? Because I would love very much to have somewhat of an update a bit sooner than later. Is this something that is being planned, that we would have something, whether it's next quarter or so, where we could have an update?
Do you wish? Just a response from the public service. I can clarify, it wasn't a poking. It said that we were talking about May and June, which is, less than a year away. That is preferable to me, but if you were thinking of something sooner, and I'll let the public service respond in terms of timelines.
So normally we would be presenting the annual workforce diversity report in Q2 of every year. At least that would be the plan. So it wouldn't be a year, it would be 8 months or thereabouts. But the only thing I would caution on is the amount of work that it takes to compile this report is quite substantial. In terms of if there was maybe a mini update that was being sought, maybe that's something that we could investigate. That might just be tables or something rather than the full comprehensive report.
Yeah, if I was going to poke, I think there's 2 areas that, and I wouldn't use the word poke, I would use the words maybe probe a bit, is number 1, for sure, come back, but it would be around the EDI strategy. For instance, a question that I have is, how many times has this team met with one of the equity groups? For instance, we have Women at Work. And have Women at Work seen the strategy? And if you could point to where they've informed it. That would be a question.
Yes.
How many times have you met with them over the past year? As the first part of the question. The second part is, did they see the strategy, and which parts can you tell me if they've been informed?
I'm the equity office liaison with the Women at Work Professional Equity Network, and have been to their monthly meetings. The EDI strategy and updates I do provide to them on a monthly basis, so they are very aware
of what it is that we are working on. How they have informed their interests, their insights, their needs have been expressed in a number of recommendations that have been submitted through the new executive sponsor, who is the CFO, Tracy Graham. And so they have mined and curated what are some of the priorities that the Women at Work would like to see the city examine in support of women.
And is there a section like under one, you know, is 1.2.3, is that theirs, or is there a section you could say that's what that was directly derived from my interactions with them and they informed the strategy?
This recommendations kind of span beyond this. So for example, the need for a daycare, you know, so meeting the women's needs through daycare, or more of the days for appointments, because women are having to take their children to appointments and eating up all the appointments, and they don't even have time for themselves. Those types of initiatives, I don't know where they would slot into a number of important strategies to support equity employees at the city. Those are a couple of examples. And
I'd for sure be interested in the EDI strategy, but in particular, some more time-bound pieces that address the percentages that were so behind.
Yes.
The post-employment debriefs. I've been frustrated wanting to be a good partner, watching women walk out the door in senior ranks of the public service, asking for what have we learned from post-employment briefs are on our ability to retain and our ability to advance or retain. How has that informed the strategy? So I'm sort of with Phyllis in terms of seeing it again. I think that that's how this committee can be a better partner to the public service by, you know, assisting in trying to help some of the time bound. And also we would get an update on, you know, that staff person that is clearly a barrier to so many things. I will say I don't agree with them being a barrier to internships, for instance. I don't agree because with one staff, host interns. And I do know how much work it is, but I don't agree that it should be a barrier. There was not these things in, you know, I'm 51. There was not a thing called an EDI office, let alone an EDI coordinator. And folks were still doing interns, and a lot of us have had our, you know, jobs because maybe we've gotten that internship. So while that is very valuable, it's very important to creating a safe environment in a very ideal scenario, right? I don't see that as a barrier. So that part I find a little rough. Some of the things that are on hold here, given, you know, that you're not the hiring managers. This is the enabling team. The hiring managers are out there in the public service. So, so I'm kind of curious if we would see movement on that if we invited you back within about 6 months or so. But I'll leave it to the committee on what you want to do. Phyllis, if you have a motion, you would, you know, be receiving the information. The report is information, and you would be suggesting that we would come back with a verbal report, for instance. And I don't mean to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to provide an example for those that might be new to the committee of a motion that, you know, would see this back on the agenda sooner rather than later. And so it would be a motion to receive it as information and to put it on the agenda for an upcoming meeting for a verbal report from the administration. And we clearly enjoyed the company of the team here, and I want to thank them. But if that's a motion you'd like to make, Phyllis, I can help you out.
Thank you. And yes. And so I think as a committee, if we could agree on a reasonable time in terms of when the EDI report team could come back, then I think we should add that to the motion, and then I'd be happy to move that motion. So what would be reasonable? 3 months? 4?
That's typically, we sometimes involve the public service in discussing that. 4 months is really quick. That means for a verbal report, it's actually, 4 months, but it typically means 3 months for them, 4 months for us. So, 5 months would mean 4 months for them to think and consider the presentation at Human Rights Committee of Council. And then 5 months in our time, because typically they work up through the CAO in the month prior to arrival at council in front of you, the Committee of Council for Human Rights. So that's a discussion point, just by way of background. So 3 months means 2 months for them. 4 months, 3 months, 5 months, 4 months, that sort of thing. So if you're looking for a reasonable, that's just a bit of the flavor around what that means for the public service.
Okay. So I move that we receive this report as information, with the understanding that the HRCC committee, would have a follow-up report within 5 months from today.
Any discussion on Phyllis's motion? Peter Prinsloo, our clerk, has an intervention. I always find that helpful.
Not an intervention as such. I just want to point out that this report proceeds up to council. That's the only thing.
Yes, and it would proceed up to council, noting to council that we would want to see a verbal report in 4 months' time back at HRCC. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And that was unanimously carried. Thank you very much for the discussion. Appreciate it so much. Thank you, team.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll move on to our regular agenda items, the strategy, priorities, and plan update. Before you in your agenda, there is submissions from me to do with the activities that I've been doing in line with the strategic priorities plan update. There is a long 13 pages in addition to really exciting news on the Human Rights Dialogue series. We, of course, have our special guest with us, Devon Clunas, but I want to point out some of the agenda here on the Human Rights Dialogue series. You'll recall some of the priorities and plans that we had with respect to the strategy that we did back in February was to do a great deal more public dialogue and human rights education. And so I feel pretty good about where we're at on the local, national, international front. Some of this includes the international work that we've done as a city, and then the Human Rights Dialogue series component. We have dates that we did in September for International Week of the Deaf, dates on a kitchen talk, dates for our age-friendly launch, which was a very soft launch engagement consultation that was just this week. Upcoming is another launch that we won't talk about yet, but November 18th, we're looking at a Harvest and Human Rights Dialogue breakfast, and November 19th on International Toilet Day, a partnership with Manitoba Council for International Cooperation, and the Kitchen Talk was a partnership with with Sandra Delarond and University of Manitoba Human Rights Center. So that I don't know if there's any questions on strategic priorities and an update. But if not, I'll get a mover. Lots of reading. So much reading. Ayodele for the move, I think. All those in favor? That too is carried unanimously with Angie, I think, absent for the vote.
Adore, yeah.
Do we want to move up Devon Clunas? We have you as the dialogue of event collaboration with Compassionate Cities, but seeing that you're here a little earlier than I anticipated, I was wondering if we could have a motion to hear from Devon. Ayodele, I think, is nodding his head, so he's going to move it. All those in favor? That was carried unanimously. I sort of preempted your discussion, Devon, because on November 12th, I have in the Human Rights Dialogue series, the Compassionate Cities launch and the collaboration within the public, the desire of the committee and those that have gone before us in this committee, the alum in the Human Rights Committee of Council, and then including other folks that participate in the subcommittees and more, really wanting to see human rights dialogue advance and that public education component. But the collaboration with Compassionate Cities is something I'd like you to talk about. The opportunity to integrate human rights and compassion into the city of Winnipeg's municipal policies, but also in sort of, I think, what you talked about earlier, just, as natural as breathing, if I can quote you.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Councillor. And I'm not here alone. Perry Kimmelman is here with me. I don't want to take all of the thunder by any stretch. And let me say, Phyllis, wonderful to see you. And actually, this discussion is something that Phyllis and myself and others, apart from this committee, were having quite some time ago. So it's really wonderful to see it coming together again. But I do thank you for your interest in it, Councillor Rawlings. And let me start with two questions I've been posing to Canadians and Americans for the last 2.5 years. And I want to see what your response is. How many of you are satisfied with the state of the world? I'm anticipating that there are 0 hands going up. And I've posed that question to well over probably 19,500 individuals. I've only had 4 hands go up at that point so far. And then I'll follow up with how many are optimistic that things are going to change for the better. So do we have any hands that are optimistic? Phyllis, thank you. Any others? Can we see any others? Typically, I get maybe 5%. So that's not a large percentage, but there are some people who are optimistic. And so I say that we need to lead the change. And it doesn't matter where I am in the world. The last 2 weeks, I was in Jamaica working with students. But my head still is always in Winnipeg, that who's going to set the example? And I want to say to you that we have the ability to set the example for the rest of the world right now. When I took over as chief in 2012, we were at the point murder and crime capital of the country. And again, everyone's wondering who's going to lead the change. And typically all we did back then was said, let's put more police officers on the streets. That's going to resolve it. It never did. So what I said was, let's start thinking about more of a compassionate approach. And I said, what if we started to institute, it is a culture of safety for all. Doesn't matter where you live in our city, you should have that sense of safety and compassion and care. And it's amazing the transformation that we saw in our city over the next 4 years. Based on that principle in 2013, I was actually invited, and Perry was part of a team that went down to Louisville because they were previously declared a compassionate city. The following year, I was invited to Utah to the Conference of World Religions, talking about the type of policing that we were doing in our city. And I can tell you the first year in our city, taking a different approach of more of a compassionate approach, we saw crime drop 13.9% with no additional expenditures on police. And I can tell you every year we actually gave money back. We never once went over budget, but if you look at Maclean's magazine in 2016, they said it looked like a minor miracle had occurred in our city. because we saw incredible growth in community cohesion and a reduction in crime. No additional expenditures. Now, I spent a lot of my time both in the US and in our country teaching about policing, teaching about leadership, and it was really interesting to listen to some of your discussions on EDI, talking about all of those issues. And I can tell you the things that I'm teaching across North America are the things that we did right here in the city of Winnipeg. And as we said, the world is not in a very positive place right now. And who is going to help lead change? Why can change not come out of the city of Winnipeg? I absolutely believe it is. It can. But it really requires us to do something a little bit different. And so, Councillor Rawlings, when you and I met with Perry, I was really, like I said, just so thrilled that you started talking about the Human Rights Committee of Council, the Human Rights Dialogue series, because here's what we would like to do in our city. I think the biggest thing that's missing right now is this disconnect. People are not coming together and having meaningful discussion, meaningful dialogue about what type of a city would we like to see. And yes, we can talk about human rights specific to individual groups, or we can start talking about, as I said, this culture, the air that we breathe. That if we actually had the right culture within our city, more than likely we wouldn't need a committee like this, because it would be natural for us to be doing all of the things that you're talking about, but we just haven't spent the time to have dialogue in the public arena saying, this is who we are, and this is how we get there. So we want to start a dialogue series starting on November the 12th, that being the first one, but it needs to be ongoing. If we did anything right during my time as chief, was that it was consistent. There was a consistent approach to policing. It wasn't just a specific unit doing it. It was the entire organization that adopted the philosophy of crime prevention through social development. We want to create a new culture. But what we also did was that we had these types of dialogue across the entire city. So everyone was a part of it. It wasn't just the police service. It wasn't in one organization. It was the entire city that was socialized to see ourselves in a very common way. And I can tell you, consistently in the community, people would be saying to me, Chief, we feel the difference. How do you measure a feeling? And then people started acting accordingly. I think if we spend the time and we do that here in our city, we can actually transform what we're seeing, the social decay that's taking place. No specific program will be able to address or arrest that decay. We have to create a new culture within our city. And a city based on a charter of compassion, human rights. I absolutely believe that that is the approach, but it's going to require us taking this concerted, dedicated effort, not stopping anything that's ongoing, but just doing this. And it's not going to cost us a ton of money. As I said, we reduce crime, didn't cost us a lot of money. We engage the citizens on an ongoing basis. I really believe that's what's missing right now in our community. We do that here, we can create the right culture and create a charter city, a charter of compassion. This is how we will operate in the city of Winnipeg. And I honestly believe the world will be coming to Winnipeg to say, how did you do that? We'll have something to export. So that is what I wanted to share with you. And Councillor Rawlings, any questions for both myself and Perry, because Perry's on the line as well.
Thank you so much, Perry. Thank you. I can see you now. I was questioning Peter if you're on. There you are in your blue bomber shirt. I can questions for Devon Clunas. If you want to say a few words, Perry.
You're muted, Perry.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
Yeah, you are.
Yes.
Okay, so this is all very new. Attending this meeting is very different from my experience in, I'm a dentist, so we have meetings and we don't have the kind of, discipline around things. And, in private business, you can move more quickly, right? We don't have the constraints. So I'm really here listening and learning and how processes work. And I find it very interesting. And it's very different, of course, in how we make decisions when we run our businesses. I would only echo that I'm very much into culture, and my own piece, as I've said before, really has to do with bringing people together at the faith communities in what I hope is essentially a collective effort in partnership with the city, and for us to go places through our networks, and I'm Devon and I, an organizing committee, which are easier for us to do because we don't have the level of and the kinds of constraints that perhaps you have, so that we can be we can work very effectively with you and in a sense for you, and go and have the conversations and host the conversations that are easier for us to do. So in hopes again of trying to make a cultural shift, and I think that's what we're trying to do in a kind of like a publicly driven process from, let's say, the public, saying what it is that they value, and what in a diverse city, which we do live in, clearly one of the most diverse cities and a functional city at that, with their diversity, and how we can kind of partner and do that together. So that's about all I have to say, and I hope that message lands well.
Yeah. Any questions? Committee, Phyllis, I think your hand's up. Thank you.
I just want to thank you, Devon and Perry, for this presentation, or I guess overview. I think it resonates very deeply with me, because we have to have some form of hope as we traverse the next months and years ahead. So it's really more of a commentary, but I do have a little bit of a question in the commentary. And the little question is it this a faith-based approach, or is it something else?
Great question. No, it's not a faith-based approach, but the faith communities, everyone is invited to be a part of it. They really are just dialogue. So if let's say, for example, a church, a synagogue, a mosque wanted us to host, a community conversation in their facility, by all means, we will do that. This is calling the entire community together and meeting them where they are, but with a common message.
And then just the last follow-up. Thank you for that clarification. So this is both of you and going just across the country doing this. Do you see yourselves planting ambassadors for this? Because it's only two of you.
Well, I'm glad you asked that. It's not just us, Phyllis. And actually, you are going to be a part of it if you so desire. I honestly mean that. We're saying we simply want to point the light, saying, here's what we need to do. There's no way the two of us could do this, or a small group. We want to set the tone, and we want to say to community leaders and individuals, here's what you can do. And it's no different than what I did, as I said, when I was chief of police. I set the vision, but the entire community was a part of it. So no, it won't be just the two of us.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Well needed, very timely.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Any further hands up? Kara.
I think maybe a two-part question. First part, I'm curious how many of these dialogue events you have done so far. And the part two is around what are some of the things that have come up for you in your events so far that have kind of stood out?
We have not done any yet.
Okay.
And that's why we're launching with you. And as I said, Perry articulated it very well, that we want to be soldiers for you, so to speak. So we want to work with this committee to actually help advance your purpose, your cause. So it's not just our human rights or our dialogues. But we haven't done any yet because we've been very purposeful to ensure that we kind of socialize it with the key groups within the city. And as I said, when we presented to Councillor Rawlings, fully right on board, we saw how we could work very closely together. And again, it's about the city of Winnipeg. We thought, what better vehicle than through your committee? It is your city, and from there it will flow out. So this will be the first one.
Yeah, and I believe there's 3 in total that we are.
Yeah, that we're aiming for in sort of the next, 6 months. We're actually we've come so far in terms of doing what we said we were going to do as a committee. If you think back, those of you that were at the February 14th event, and this agenda, it really feels like we've passed that formation stage, and we've got we're in the implementation stage. heavy duty here. I don't know, like if all, Kara for sure, Angie, Doris, Phyllis, our early day conversations, like it's feeling pretty good in terms of the pace that we, and Lizzie too, you were there. I think Ayodele, you were there, it feels pretty good in terms of the pace. This meeting, it's feeling like it's gelling. And yes, that we're actually not only just having some dialogues behind us that we said we were going to do in the main, that International Week of the Deaf event, and Doug, who's a member of a subcommittee here, it was his ambition back in February to get that done, and now we've done it. But that we're actually entertaining a collaboration with Compassionate Cities. It feels like the work is we've really planned to do this work, and now we're generating friends. And it's strength meeting strength. So that part is, I think, a very exciting part of where we're at as a committee, that we're crushing some of the goals that we had set out for ourselves, so much so that a whole other network, the Compassionate Cities Network, have said, hey, Human Rights Committee of Council, maybe we partner with you too on these human rights dialogues. And that part was, like Devon said, a bit kismety. It felt like it was right, because we had definitely had the same sort of plans, and the Compassionate Cities Network is a really diverse bunch. They meet our mandate in various ways. Compassion is obviously a skill that you need for human rights attainment, but also these are the peace builders in the city. There's peace networks, and they do fall out, as Phyllis, I think, was pointing out. They fall out of some faith communities for sure, but also independent communities too, that could be, they might meet in a church, but they might not be from that church. They might meet in a community hall and be a member of a church, but that's where they meet. And so there is some networks, and Devon, your network better than others. I know some of them do meet in a congregation and a cultural center in my ward that I know of, and a few others. I don't know if they're connected, just like the climate folks they might meet in a church, the climate committee, or in a synagogue. Some that might be the only time they go to a synagogue. I don't know. Yeah.
I will tell you that there are incredible organizations and individuals in this city, and oftentimes people are working in isolation. What we hope to do, the key thing, is connect and create that synergy. And out of that, incredible things will grow. Oftentimes, like I say, people will promote the negative. We want to promote the positives, and I think positive will be positive, and Winnipeg will be that example.
Ayodele.
Thank you so much, Chair. It's good to see you, Devon. This is kind of commentary rather than questions. I'm hoping that this compassionate city will actually take flight in Winnipeg. I have some kind of concern from my African community, people that I know over this past have been in Winnipeg over a decade plus now, and what I've seen so far, somehow our people see Winnipeg as a policing city, like the way and manner the policing is done is more of a punitive rather than a correctional, compassionate policing, especially in dishing out fines for some, like speed traps set here and there, every corner you go, like lights here and there. It's as if there's nothing someone told me like I don't know how to live in Winnipeg anymore. I think I'm being suffocated. Another came to me. Myself, I bear I bear that front at the time. Like, you know what? There's no explanation. And I've been to other cities like in Alberta, in Calgary, where you see them more of a correctional. You'll see a bus that it's speed. It's already written on the bus. It tells you more than a kilometer away to slow down if you're going on a pace. Once in a while, you see some unidentified police car will just come and grab, maybe if not unlucky, but most often than most times, you will see it ahead and people are falling into line. They're falling in line, doing it shows more compassion rather than just sinning. I hope and I would love to be part of this to carry things beyond, because Winnipeg is we've come. I was in Winnipeg immediately when you came in, being the chair, the head of police. I was so happy being the first Black man to hold that post. Marcus being a very good friend also. We talked about at the time, and he was like, maybe there's a quarter to it. I just digress. I hope I really want. There's a lot to it. At the time, my garage was boggled by some, I don't want to say young guys. I caught them on camera. It took the police more than a month before they even respond to the incident. And at the end of the day, they came to me like, since you saw them, we caught the guy, can come on compassionate ground. They're the one that is to me to extend. I said, I already know that. I want to do that. But if it goes or flip the other way around, things will not go that way. It's rather, not that I'm biased, I'm just stating the obvious. So this is a good call. It's a good cause to support, and I hope that Winnipeg will actually, and people, leaders in the community will take this and be, that ambassador that you're looking for and make Winnipeg a real compassionate city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those comments. That's precisely the type of dialogue and discussions we hope to have. And you said some things that make a lot of sense to me, even as a former chief of police. When I travel to a place like Mexico, for example, and the police are continuously driving around with their lights on, I say that's a good thing. That's kind of what you're mentioning. So we need to hear from the citizens and adjust our practices, our policies, our procedures based on what will resonate in a good way. So it's that type of information that we can take back to respective organizations and say, hey, have we considered this? Because we need to change, right? So thank you for that.
Harry, did you want to respond to, I see your hand is up. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Are we there?
Oh, we're good. We're here.
Okay, sorry. I'm kind of Zoom disabled. So here's the thing. I would echo what Devon has to say, is that the kind of conversation that we just witnessed needs to come from people, everyday people, and we need to create these venues where they can have these conversations and processes where we can act. But what I just would add to this, which I haven't said before, even to Devon, is that I think what we're aiming for is something like moving into trying to develop a culture of a participatory democracy, which is not the kind of democracy that generally exists in the West, and that by encouraging what I would call a participatory democracy through engaging people in conversations, then the changes come from the people who have decided, that they can make a change, that we do, that we're just not going to be listening, but we will create, a method or, a system that allows whatever is vented to us and explained to us is what they need so that they can get re-engaged or begin to become engaged in their own democracy in their own city, that together we provide that vehicle. Like we can reach out and allow people to speak their minds, but ultimately it has to change in practice or in law, or however you want to make that change systemically. So I I'm just throwing it out there that this may very well be a way we are trying to bring more of a participatory democracy to our city.
Judith, you have your hand up.
Okay, I have a question for Devon. You said you were going to you want to partner with a lot of different agencies, and I'm wondering where the Indigenous community is in all of this.
Right in the middle on our organizing committee is Terry Brown, Indigenous community member, and so that's always front and center for us. No one will be left out of this, but yeah, Terry is right there with us.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Ruben, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do want to say thank you to all of you for this discussion. I think this is really needed. I came from the settlement world, and my organization is the an organization that work closely with the city to make sure the newcomers are settled and supported in their integration. And one of the reasons why I'm interested in this is that we just published a report a couple of months ago, and when we were talking about the report, I think there was some media coverage about it. And out of that, I want to be short here. I just received a very long 2 letters from individuals who couldn't believe what we were saying as a community in terms of safety of people, and especially newcomers experiencing mental health, and not just only with newcomers, but anybody that experience mental health interacting with the police. Wrote that a very long letters to me and did a research on the background of the communities that were involved in the conversations, and then said to me that he looked at the policing at all those different 10 countries, and Canada is way, way, way better than those countries. And wondering about why are we even talking about the police, and or whether we were misled to come to Canada, or did we choose to come? The reason why I'm saying this is that after I read his letters, I did not know who the person is. And I have no way to respond to the person by saying that, yes, Canada is the best, but anybody that live here need to be treated equally. That's just simple what we are asking for. We are not comparing Canada with the rest of the world or where we are coming from. So what I want to say is that I think we need a dialogue in our city. And I think that in a time of fear, with all the things that we are seeing in the world, I think dialogue is very important. And I think I'm very happy that this committee would be happy to support this initiative. I think we needed it in our city more than ever, based on what I hear from the people in the community. So I just want to say thank you for bringing this to us and asking our partnership.
Thank you.
If we're rounding on a conclusion of the discussion, I don't see any further hands up, but I have been wrong before. Then I would ask if Ruben, if you would do a motion for I think I need a motion for the strategic priorities and plan update, as well as, and it includes the dialogue series, as well as item number 7, which is essentially the presentation, to receive it as information of the presentation. And if you're prepared to move that, then we have two items here on the agenda that sort of go hand in hand. The dialogue series as part of our strategic priorities, item number 1 and item number 7, and I'm sure the clerk will let us receive them both as information if you're prepared to move, Ruben.
I'll be happy to do that. Yes.
Okay. So moved by Ruben. All those in favor? Thank you very much. That's unanimous and very exciting, I think. So thank you very much, Perry. Devon, you're free to observe for the rest of the meeting if you'd like. But you're also free to go with my thanks. That was items number 1 and number 7. We've completed item number 6, and now we're back to a committee budget update, which we can do really briefly. And Ali has presented the Human Rights Committee of Council budget update. Is there any questions? Do you need her to provide a 2-minute overview, or did you read it because you're keeners before the meeting, and is someone prepared to move?
It's Angie. I read it prior and I'm prepared to move unless there's no discussion.
Any discussion with Angie moving? All those in favor? That was carried unanimously. The next item is the Human Rights Committee of Council annual report for 2024. And I don't know if there's any questions from those of you that were part of the committee in 2024. I would like to point out in honor of my friend Marcus Chambers and former chair that he says some nice words about the committee on page 4 of this report. I leave with immense confidence in your continued leadership and the transformative power that you bring to this vital cause. And so I want to acknowledge that, those words of his. I want to acknowledge Ali, who writes, I think, on page 6 about her enjoyment of working with committee members. And so is there a mover for this? Any reflections on the annual report? It was your work. Mary Levine is also here. An excellent picture of Mary Levine smiling.
Not here today.
She's not here today, but she was chair. She also mentions the contributions of the Human Rights Committee of Council and the subcommittee. And so did Angie.
Angie did too.
Which page, Angie? Which page? It's there. So,
Honestly, I don't remember the page.
okay. So, you know, I hope you like the look of this report. I do. And anyways, if we have a mover. Thank you, Ayudeli. Oh, unanimous. It's all unanimous almost here. Okay, all those in favor. That was carried. We'll move to the work plan and reports of the subcommittee, and we have the Access and Inclusion Subcommittee report and the Equity Diversity Subcommittee report. I'll turn to the chairs for item number 4, the work plan and reports of the subcommittees.
Can Kara go first? This way I can just come. No, well, there's a reason, there's a method here, because then I can just if possible, combine item 4 and 5. I can provide an update on 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
If Kara's amenable, that's fine. It's over to you.
Okay. So the Equity and Diversity Subcommittee has met 4 times since the start of this fiscal year. There's only 3 reports in there because our October meeting was earlier today. So you'll have that report for the next time we get together. But over the course of that time period, we focused on creating a work plan for what's likely going to be a multi-year period, given that there is quite a substantial amount of tasks incorporated in that work plan. But I think go big or go home, right? So we have identified, and believe it or not, this is the narrowed down version. It was originally a lot longer. So you did because you saw it. So we have identified some main subject matter areas that we would like to focus our energies on, and then a few activities within each subject matter area. We also identified targets and deliverables for each one of those, who's responsible for what, whether there's a budgetary requirement for them, and any kind of like schedule or time frame if that is applicable. So during our May and June meetings, that was what we focused on, was creating this work plan. And then in our September meeting, we had to choose somewhere to start. So we started at the top of the work plan and have decided to start working on the activities under the objective to LGBTQIA plus issues. So in our September meeting and our meeting today, we have been talking about wanting to assess the state of 2S LGBTQIA plus rights within the city of Winnipeg, how we would want to go about that, potentially doing an audit of the state of 2S LGBTQIA plus rights in the city, what that might look like. We've worked to narrow it down a little bit from our excessive scope that we've started with, and we've had some really good conversations on that. And I think today we made some good progress there too, actually. So we've been talking, that's what we've been talking about for the last 2 meetings, in addition to also working a little bit on the dialogue events under public education, as we're hoping to have a dialogue event around screening of a Pride documentary that we're going to be working with Pride Winnipeg potentially, Rainbow Resource Center potentially, and some other 2S LGBTQIA plus community organizations. So that's something that we're really excited about and have started chatting about. And that's a very high level update of where we're at.
Okay, excellent. Angie, over to you.
Okay, so mine's the same as Kara, and that's my report. No, our committee actually has the same cadence in terms of meetings. We meet monthly. We've had since May. We've had May, June, and September. We haven't yet met in October. I do believe that's in 2 weeks.
Right.
And we have our committee has been busy since the end. Since we met, about this or reported on it from last year. We had 16 new members onto the subcommittee. So a lot of recruitment and then building the committee and, really establishing cohesion, building goals. Really, the work of the committee is mainly driven by the Accessibility for Manitobans Act and the areas of focus, the standards within the Act. Particularly, our committee has decided to focus and has been focusing on the built environment, access to communication, and transit mobility, so transportation. Within the last year, we've met with Transit, City of Winnipeg Transit, around Transit Plus and transit services. I'm going to make a big assumption that we will be having further discussions, particularly around the updated transit network and the routes and how that affects accessibility for a wide variety of people within the city of Winnipeg. We met particularly around access to communication. 2 members on our subcommittee are from the deaf community and organized a community public event for the deaf community during International Week of the Deaf with WFPS on around emergency preparedness. And this occurred at the Deaf Center of Manitoba, which was well attended. Both we had an afternoon session and an evening session. So there's some follow-up items around that and some good follow-up items in terms of continued involvement in a collaboration with WFPS and the Office, I believe, of Emergency Management. So some really good work around that. And then I guess this ties into item number 5 around public works and the built environment. So we've met with we met, sorry, I was just thinking I'm skipping over something, so I have to circle back and remember to report on the wheelchair icon. But we had met with the City of Winnipeg Public Works around snow clearing, as we had understood that there was a process around snow clearing and accessibility. And so we met particularly with Michael Cantor, who's the manager of street maintenance and public works. And he has been working with the subcommittee around snow clearing policies, particularly private residences and clearing windrows. And we've understood that there's a process around that. So we've done some, the subcommittee has done some work. We started last October. And particularly, pulling it up here. So some of the work that we've done is around adjusting the process and to apply for it, to be considered, to apply. And so we've introduced through with Michael Cantor an online application process for people, so that there's a hybrid approach. There was some comments around questions around the medical certification, so the requirements to eligibility around that, and personal health information, and whether or not that was compromised. So we've been having some conversations around that, and then some flexibility around. So right now the policy states that the windrow can only be clear a front windrow, so a front drive. So some people require access on, laneway access or otherwise. And so we've been working on that. And then some conversations around budget allocation. So we have been working in drafting and reviewing an application form, an online web page, and training for 311 employees. And then just that the city has provided clarity on the front windrow policy. And I do believe that if we wanted to have an amendment to that, that would need to come from an elected official. And that we had some clarity around the budget, around the snow clearing there. So just bringing this particular item to this committee is basically we need to receive, where has the committee reviewed the report, and is there any feedback provided? So I will await to see if there's feedback or questions around that work, and I'd like to circle back on the wheelchair icon because I have a quick update on that report as well.
Okay. Kara has a question.
I have a question regarding item number 2, medical certificate requirements. Do we have a sense of if requiring a medical certificate would prove to be a barrier for folks?
Yeah, so that was part of the discussion, right? So that could be like a financial barrier, right? Or access, like some folks don't have access to a primary physician. So that has been in the conversation. Really what we were trying to do was kind of reduce some micro barriers, if you will, right at the outset. And so I think to answer that, I think where we were left with that is that we would continue the conversation. So I'm very pleased to report Michael Cantor from the city has been extremely agreeable and amenable and amazing to work with, and has agreed to have an ongoing dialogue with the subcommittee around a multitude of issues and barriers and processes, and has really been really fantastic around moving things quite quickly in terms of improving access. So it is, to answer your question, it's on the table. It's not taken off. It's a continued conversation, particularly with regards to medical certification.
Okay. I could just add to that too, Angie. One of the things that we had looked at initially right off the go was the desire to go in and have to make an appointment to go into your doctor, and then have them type up this letter of like, this person is unable to do XYZ, and what proves it, basically give their diagnosis. Like it was very outdated previously. And so from then we have switched to creating a letter that is already provided by the city. And so hoping to have it as kind of a smaller barrier, if you will. And it's basically says, is this person able to, yes or no? Is it indefinite? Or is it something that, is a temporary thing where they will need help? So we've kind of looked at, streamlining it to be a little bit more inclusive and accessible without the barriers, still acknowledging that folks may have to pay a fee by signing it, but also recognizing that it's not a full letter that they're typing. So trying to do our best in that, but the conversation is definitely still being had.
Yeah, like basically from that basis that from the basis of providing the least amount of medical information possible, right? So we don't necessarily need to put a full diagnosis or we don't need to put in-depth medical information to qualify for this program. We looked at that criteria to, you know, what is the least intrusive process that we can develop or suggest. So the city's been really great and amenable.
Okay. Any further questions? If not, Angie, you wanted to circle back?
Yes. So
yeah.
So another item that the subcommittee was tasked with was to review a report that the city planning, property and development had come up with the cost for engagement and adoption of a new accessibility icon. And this was part of a motion that that a Human Rights Committee of Council member had put forth around consideration of a new accessibility icon. So the city had undertaken a review and a report around the costs associated. So we were tasked as a subcommittee to review it and to have a discussion and put forth recommendations. So I just wanted to put those for record that the subcommittee has reviewed it, discussed it, and the three options that we had considered as per the report was to replace the signage with a forward-leaning accessibility icon on a gradual basis as signage wears out, so with no determined timeline. And to replace, second would be to replace the signage with a forward-leaning accessibility icon in 5 years on a planned basis. And then the third option for consideration was to replace the signage with the forward-leaning icon within 12 to 18 months on an expedited basis. And the city had put forth costs for consideration for particularly the third option and the first option. And after discussion, the subcommittee is recommending option 1 to replace the signage with the forward-leaning accessibility icon on a gradual as needed basis as signage wears out.
Okay. Any discussion? Right. So with respect to the work plan reports from subcommittees, we'll need a motion to receive them all as information. Before we do, I will note that there are moments within the briefings that I really appreciate, including where you have clearly delineated a counselor needs to move this forward. And please know, I do see myself in that. So, and we can have further discussion about that, but I like how you've delineated that. I think that's really important and in line with the mandate that says, well, we're here for you, council. And we've got thoughts, right? So, Lizzie, do you want to move this item? And you'd also be moving item number 5 to the accessible snow clearing brief.
Yeah, I'm fine with moving that in item number 5.
Okay, and Ali's just saying, did you do what you wanted to though, Angie? Did I cut you off at any time?
No, I'm good. I've covered all the things are covered.
Okay, good. Okay. So moved by Lizzie. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That too was carried. And also item number 5, the accessible snow clearing brief. Do I need to call the question again for that? And if I'll call the question again for that. And that was still moved by Lizzie?
Yes.
All those in favor? That was carried unanimously too. Now we've jumped a lot around in this agenda, but I think we can call for an adjournment if you're ready, unless there's anything further. All right, call for an adjournment. Thank you, Ayud Ali. Thank you very much, everybody. All those in favor of adjourning. That's 5 minutes to 6. Thank you very much. We'll see you again and I'll be back in touch.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
See you.
Thank you. Have a